Versatile Mage. Chapter 114. Stardust becoming nebula. Cold. It was just like dozens of small needles were entering her skin. It felt like her blood was completely frozen, unable to circulate around her body. Xixia's breathing within the fridge was getting slower, the rise and fall of her chest clearly decreasing. The coldness and sleepiness were intertwining. If she were to close her eyes now, she'd silently fall asleep. If I fall asleep now, then I'll never open my eyes again. Yixia suddenly bit her lip, forcing herself to wake up. The two colossal-eyed ape rats didn't seem to have any intentions of leaving. Their noises were not too far away from where Yixia was hiding. Yixia herself didn't know how much longer she would be able to persist. From how she saw it, it would be much better to freeze to death in the fridge than to become food for the colossal-eyed ape rats. As the air got increasingly thinner, Yixia tried to adjust her breathing as much as possible. Her mind couldn't help but drift off into nicer memories. Creak, hiss. Boom, boom. A few deep imprints had been fiercely smashed in on the iron door of the control room, and the sound of the black beast's claws scraping on the door was clearly audible. These black beasts were very obedient when it came to their master's commands. They knew that Mo Fan was hiding in this place, and if they didn't personally rip Mo Fan's body in two, then they definitely would not leave. Their sharp claws slowly but surely ripped into and shredded the iron door, causing cracks to appear. As soon as cracks appeared, the process of destroying the door became much easier. After these black beasts first cracked the iron door, they became like prisoners who had seen the open light. They began to shriek in excitement. Moreover, they began to take turns using their claws on the door. On the other side of the door, Mo Fan was sitting down. He could no longer turn a blind eye to the imminent danger. He was able to hear the sound of the door being shredded, the black beast shrieking noises becoming increasingly clearer as the crack began to widen. It's just, what was the point of being completely struck by terror? Whether he was able to survive was completely dependent on the two stardusts within his spirit world. The purple and red stardust began to emit a strong, then weak radiance. A canopy of faint light was enveloping his two stardusts on the outside, while inside the stardust blossomed a radiance that was about to break through the hazy light canopy. The light canopy was like an eggshell, or a cocoon. It held energy capable of breaking through the shell. It looked like the canopy was immovable under the attack of magic energy, yet there was a clear swelling caused by the rummaging energy within. "Break for me," Mo Fan shouted from his heart. On his chest, the little loach pendant's radiance seemed to be transferred into the attacking power of Mo Fan's stardust. Its original emanation had turned into a sudden condensation. Just like many small rivers converging into a great river, the once quiet great river suddenly rushed forth. The surging wave ferociously smashed into the dam across the river. Cracks finally emerged on the outer shell. It's nearly done. It's nearly done. Mo Fan's insides began to fill with excitement. He was only crazed about breaking into the next level. Mo Fan could already feel his mind suffering from a huge energy rebound, generating an immense headache. Initially, Mo Fan believed that he couldn't do it at all. The impact of the mental feedback was just like a sword piercing through his brain, or like the waves of the sea crashing into each other in the midst of a storm. Mo Fan had never experienced this kind of mental impact during his training. It was much worse than exhausting his whole energy. It was a nightmare filled with torment and destruction. And in the process, if his mentality loosened just a little, or he had a single thought of giving up, then the all-out attack would vanish in an instant. He would then need to start all over again. Mo Fan felt that his head was about to explode. His veins were bulging all over his face, but he was afraid to let go. Truthfully, this pain was no less than being ripped apart by the black beasts. A person with a weak fortitude would have given up at the very beginning, but Mo Fan had committed to it with his very last breath. Closing his eyes, the last flashback that he saw was a girl on the verge of death. If the girl was ripped apart by a colossal-eyed ape rat, Mo Fan believed that he would have to bear a lot more pain for the rest of his life. The mental impact was magnifying, increasing fivefold from its original strength. Mo Fan ground his teeth and persisted. Tenfold. Mo Fan rolled up his tongue, scared that he was unable to control his own body, and bit off the end of his own tongue. Inside him, his spirit world was full of raging storms. The purple and red stardusts looked as if they were about to perish. In the hugely churning spirit realm, they were dulling abruptly. The light ray was getting weaker and weaker, not even like a distant star. It looked like it was about to disappear into the dark night. At this moment, Mo Fan suddenly opened his eyes. His pupils were expanding inhumanely. In his eyes there was an endless universe. In the deepest depths were his dimming lightning and fire stardusts. His pupils widened. Mo Fan's entire face trembled. The two deathly still stardusts suddenly burst out with an incredibly hot radiance, and to his surprise, flooded his entire spiritual universe at incredible speed. The purple was so gorgeous that it brightened the entire star universe, beautiful and stunning. The fiery red that ignited the darkness was sparkling and surging. Their flight and their shrouds looked as though they were creating their own little universes, their own star homes. However, what was created was no longer the same as the small little stardust that had been sitting in one corner of the universe like before. He had created a star cluster like a cloud, condensed into a dense cluster, and reflected upon each other. Stardust becoming nebula. Experiencing all of this, Mo Fan felt like his blood was boiling. Stardusts were truly like dust within the vast universe, existing, but also extremely insignificant. Thus, the energy they were able to provide for a magician could be considered relatively limited. However, the nebula was completely different from a stardust. The large group of stars occupied a huge area, their radiance brilliant. They were extremely visible in the vast spiritual universe, dominating his chaotic spiritual world. Dust and nebulous clouds. The difference between the two was very clear. If every little star's light contained magic energy, then how much energy would this densely packed nebula cloud contain, and just what level of magic would they be able to create? Within the nebula were the extremely important stars that magicians used to cast magic. It was a little different from before. Within this vivid nebula, there were a total of 49 stars. These stars were moving around the nebula, just like when Mo Fan had awakened his elements, dazzling him. This kind of feeling. Mo Fan looked at his hands in disbelief. On his left hand, there was a thirsty fire rising from his skin. As it ignited, it felt as though he had unlimited magical energy. On his right hand, the lightning arcs were like crackling lines of purple ivy as they covered his whole fist. The lightning looked as though it was striving for his favor against the flames, like a conceited brat thirsting for a chance to demonstrate its strengths. Chapter end. Please guys like, comment, share, and subscribe.